Om Shanti and welcome. So this evening we have an opportunity to explore and dig and find new meaning for the very purpose that we come here for, which I think most of us would agree is the process and the outcome of something we call transformation. And it's a great topic to explore, especially in the light of the experience of three old explorers here with me on the stage. And I use the word old, not in the context of the corporeal, but in the context of longevity. In other words, after many, many years, they still come here. And sometimes people ask me, why do you go? Why do you go to India? Why do you go to that mountain? And many years ago, I would have said, I go for many reasons. Some years it was to meditate, other years to recharge my batteries, other years, well, I just go for meetings and meetings and more meetings. And now I just say, I go to be. I come here just to be here. And of course, that's at the very heart of the process of our spiritual journey towards the apparent aim of self-transformation. And so our conversation tonight, our exploration tonight, is to look at, I guess, the tension between change and transformation, specifically. That's why the title of the evening is The Reality of Self-Transformation, what really changes. And of course, there's a different meaning, essentially in English, between change and transformation. Change tends to be seen as something that is temporary and reversible, whereas transformation is something which is permanent and irreversible. We're all aware of the weather. The weather changes, but the acorn transforms itself into a tree. It cannot reverse its process, whereas the weather is constantly cycling and reversing its processes. And of course the body, your body changes. It takes energy from surrounding environment and it's constantly changing, but it only really transforms when? Death. Death is a transformative impulse, and that's why nature has built within it not just the process of creativity, but the process of destructivity, and both go hand in hand, and therefore guarantee that transformation is irreversible change. But then what happens when we come to consciousness, the soul, the self, the I, the spirit, whatever we want to call the self? What does change and transformation really mean in the context of what we, in our language, call the soul? We've all had the experience, I'm sure, of coming to Manda, coming to the mountain, especially in childhood days. And we have such a wonderful time, and we're in the front of the daddies and our family and the spiritual vibrations, and we leave light and happy, and we say to people, I feel as if I've transformed. I'm a transformed being. And then when we get home, maybe after 2 days or 3 days or a week, and suddenly we realize the old habits, the old sanskars, the old me is still there, and we find a slight disillusionment in our own conclusion. And then I'm sure you've all, at some stage in your life, met someone after many years of your spiritual effort, maybe an old friend from the past, and you connect with them after many years, and one of the first things they say to you is what? It's great to see you. You haven't changed. And that shatters the illusion that we've been doing such great, powerful, transformative work over these past few years. So, very interesting territory, and I love conversations like this, and the aim tonight is to kind of kickstart a conversation which maybe challenges some of the ideas and beliefs that we have accumulated around this particular subject. And I'm just getting a note to speed up a little bit. I'm going a little bit too slow. Thank you. And so I have the privilege of spending this time on the stage, not just with three eminent yogis, but three very good spiritual friends. They're my spiritual friends. And I'm not going to introduce them as you might normally introduce someone on a stage like this, with where they've been and what they've done and a history, really. And I do that because I'd like to honor one of the characteristics of transformation, which I think in all spiritual paths reminds us that when transformation is achieved, there is no past, and yesterday is irrelevant. So all I'm going to do is introduce them as the one thing they all have in common, actually, is that they've all gravitated towards a retreat center somewhere in the world. I wonder why. And right at the end here is my dearly beloved sister Judith, and she's gravitated towards the Peace Center in America. Sorry, Peace Village in the USA, only recently. And then in the center is my dearly beloved brother Ant, as he's sometimes known. And he's recently gravitated towards the Global Retreat Center in Oxford. And then my immediate left, there is, as you all know, my dearly beloved sister Manda. And she hasn't just gravitated, she was sent. And she has been obediently running the Global Retreat Center now for something like, how long is it, Manda? 16 and a half years. And that in itself is, that's an interesting process, I'm sure, which will come up in our conversation. I don't really have a list of prepared questions, but just one question to take us into the territory. And I'm going to ask each one of them to share with us how they now remember themselves, to make present the memory of what they were like when they first began their spiritual journey, and how they see themselves now. In other words, a description of the contrast. And within that, we might get a sense of change or transformation. And so maybe I could ask Judy to kick us off. How you were and how you are.
Now, Brother Mike, I thought you told us that we had no past. Wasn't that just the last line you gave us? That's why you weren't going to introduce us, because we had no past. So, good evening. It's very nice to be with you. He's so clever, isn't he? Acorn, weather. That's very good. He's very clever. And he also didn't say, how were you then? He said, how do you now remember yourself as being then? So, then I was... I can deal with the very practical. I was living in a city. My youngest child was 20. I was working in media companies, and I was thinking about that. I was thinking about work. I was thinking about what all those friends I had did, which was go out to dinner, go to, what do they do? Go to hear music, all of that kind of thing. I was seeking. I was reading book after book after book, taking workshop after workshop. I had spent 4 or 5 months hanging out at the Sai Baba Center which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, except I liked the people. They were Indian and they were nice. So I hung around there for a few months. I was tired. I would say I was really tired. Deep inside, there wasn't anything coming in. There was a lot going out, but there wasn't much coming in. And I spent a lot of time looking for houses I could buy and fix up. I did this a lot. So I had recently done that when I met Dadi Janki, Sister Mohini, and Sister Genti in one evening. And I would say now, I live in fundamentally a motel room, and I'm very happy, and I'm still a little bit tired, but I'm not quite as tired as I was then. I'm not seeking anymore. In that sense, the seeking that I'm doing is really about how do I make all the changes inside I want to make to live the life that I'm hoping to live. I think what captures it for me was that Dadi Janki came to Peace Village spontaneously 2 years ago. We didn't know she was coming. We got news a week ahead. And suddenly, like 400 people showed up. They quit work, they canceled work, they called in sick, they rented cars, they drove across the country and showed up to see Dadi. And of course, Peace Village scrambled to accommodate them. And my main thought was, what would I have to do so that when I announced I was coming, people canceled work and rented cars to come? And I'm still a long way from that.
And thanks, Judy.
Om Shanti. Yes, I think what's changed for me, for sure, is the veneer. Most of the people I asked today whether or not I've changed said, you've changed unrecognizably. So I think the veneer of my Brahmin life is quite well established. I behave and I speak the right code, and am able to perform in such a way that people feel like I'm a BK. I would say that when I arrived, I was underneath the then veneer, which was of confidence and humor and urbanity and general man about town. I was full of fear and sorrow. And I would say that underneath my new veneer of white clothes, I'm still full of fear and sorrow. And I think that Dadi talks of being clean, and I see the essence of all the work I'm doing. It can be described many, many different ways, and transformation, change. And I said, sorry, I'm a bit fast. Sorry. I would say that the fear and sorrow are the two key detriments to the soul, and that I don't actually think I have to change, other than somehow by understanding my context better through straight gyan, and by somehow cleaning the soul through yoga, that the real me will be here and present. And that the old-fashioned way of dealing with sorrow anyway is to sort of wash it away through tears. But the kind of fear and sorrow I have, and I'm sure most people have, is so indelible that it needs the kind of acetone of accurate yoga. And so, to the extent that I've had yoga over the last 28 years, is the extent to which some fear and sorrow has gone. And there have been indications that it's better. I mean, I've had a couple of major tests that I can remember in my life. One internal to the Brahmin family, where I faced, a lot of just funny business. And, the response to funny business is anger and injustice and all this. And I've noticed that my response hasn't been bad, actually. Has been spiritually correct. And I also noticed my response when I was present at 9/11, and I was astounded at my response. And it was so unusual that I thought maybe I was going crackers. And I can only put that down to kind of 18 years then, 18 years of kind of doing something that changed the soul. Didn't change the soul, cleaned the soul. Since Daddy's class yesterday night, I've been thinking about the cleaning and how the soul actually is the same soul as 84 births ago, but just got dirty, now gets clean. So like that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
When I started thinking about it, I could only think three things about what I was. I was young, I was inexperienced, and I was innocent. And now I am wise, experienced, and older. And that was almost 29 years ago. And I suppose I have to say that it took me years to realize I had something to change or transform. I didn't realize I had so many weaknesses, and I'm still amazed and fascinated when I discover the things that I have to transform.
What do you mean things? What things?
I mean aspects of myself, weaknesses, negativities, reactions, responses, whatever you would like to call them. And till today, you still find that there is something waiting.
You mean your sanskars?
Yeah.
Was that the
Yeah.
word that?
Well,
So
sanskars,
is that all you're changing? Just your
sanskars,
sanskars?
reactions, vices, everything.
Everything is your sanskars?
Yes. Well, not
that
just sanskars.
No.
Nature, sanskars, vices, reactions.
Sanskars.
No, it's more than just sanskars. Sanskars an aspect of all of that.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, and I also remember I was happy, excited about my life ahead of me. This is before I came into Gyan.
Yeah.
And even more excited after coming into Gyan about my life ahead of me. I never knew or never really realized what it entailed, except that this was something that was going to give meaning and purpose to my life. This was the main aspect that actually enabled me to embark on this spiritual journey. As I said, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't sorrowful. At least I didn't know I was. And so I was excited about life ahead of me.
So you discovered your sorrow once you started hanging out with people like Daddy Yankee.
Oh yeah,
right?
you could say that. You could say that. And yes, I did discover, I am discovering my sorrow, and I'm discovering how that sorrow has to be replaced with something else.
Okay, that's good. So what then do you think really changes within the self? What is actually going on in the process of change?
I think what's happening, I suppose, in the process of change is, first and foremost, I'm beginning to learn and understand my own self. And when I say my own self, I mean both the original self and the acquired self. Because we have such an identity with the acquired self too. And I also think it's important to understand that acquired self. But I use what Baba shows me about my original self in order to replace with all that I have acquired with what Baba is showing me about myself.
Showing you in terms of telling you, or
no? Well, telling me is one thing, but showing me through my experiences in yoga, showing me by being in front of me, showing me through the eyes, showing me through the eyes of others even.
Showing you
showing me my beauty, my
Okay.
truth, my purity, my wisdom, my love.
Okay, sanskars.
No, not just sanskars. They are not
Okay.
sanskars. They
Okay.
are my original state of being.
Okay, all right. So there's a difference between your state of being and your sanskars.
Yes.
Because I guess the reason I'm going down this track is for me, a lot of time is spent trying to fix our sanskars, and in doing so, we avoid our innate state of being. Does that make sense?
Yes, in a sense it makes sense, but when those sanskars do come up, which are aspects of the acquired self, then I have to replace those with my original self, the beauty that's inside of me. And so whether you call them, well, transform or replace, I prefer the idea of replacing those tendencies that I have, those temporary tendencies that I have.
Okay. So is that what you do, Ant? Do you replace things?
No.
No.
That's the difference between you and me, Manda. Right? Yeah. The metaphor that I use, and it's been really helpful for me, and this metaphor has helped me make decisions about what I actually do actively in my spiritual life. And the metaphor I have for myself, the soul, is that I am and I'm sorry to bore you with this one because we've shared it before, but I'm a sponge. So I imagine the soul as a sponge, and the thing about a sponge is it only does one thing, and that is it absorbs. And so I see that through the kalpa, this sponge, starting as a nice clean new sponge from the supermarket, has picked up, all the dross and dirt as it's gone around, and it's wound up at the back end of the kalpa, having absorbed, essentially, which is all it does, in a state of complete sort of stiffness and dirt, and absolutely all it can do is actually, instead of helping, can just dirty the place. And so now it's the time to become clean again.
Right.
And so the image I have is that there's this very fast-flowing tap, otherwise known as God, and all I've got to do, the effort I have to make, is to plonk myself under the tap. And then the water squirts on me, and of course initially all the dirt comes out, so the manifestation is actually looks worse, like the homeopathic thing. And then eventually, because all the soul does is absorb, and it continues to do that, it hasn't changed actually in any way, but because it's kind of plonked itself under God, it gets to be clean, and then eventually the water, the aspects of God, the purity, everything, all the good stuff, starts coming out, and then everything is okay. And so my job, basically, isn't to try and get clean or to worry about the dirt, it's just to remain under the tap. And this I've translated into making sure I keep good company. And that's why I'm in Oxford, actually. It's as simple as that. And that's why I come to Madhuban.
You mean to be under other taps as well?
Yeah, because you sidle up to people who are getting the joke, who are vaguely on the right track, who you try and use your best judgment. And obviously, Manda isn't God, but you kind of drive up to people who you respect and who are also doing the same thing. Okay. And because I'm an absorber, and I really do, I copy. That's what I do. So as long as I'm with the right folk.
Okay, that's good. Great, Manda, you wanted to jump in
here.
Yeah,
just that. Isn't that what I'm saying? Isn't that what you're doing? You're replacing your negative experiences with positive experiences. And yes, I didn't clarify to say I be under the tap of God, but it's the same thing.
Same thing, yeah. Okay. Judy, do you feel that, is that the way that change happens for you? Is just sort of sitting under we would, our language probably say remembrance is another way of sitting under the tap. Is that how you change? Is that how you've changed?
Sure, I'd say that's roughly right. For me, I've leaned a lot on the seniors and the company of the seniors. In addition to bringing the positive, what I want to create, I find that, especially Dadi Janki, her tireless giving of methods and all of that, I find that very useful. I mean, for me, I've had to really focus on what do I want to bring into my life and really keep that in front of me. I don't focus so much on what I want to let go of or where I've been, because it actually hurts sometimes. You know, physically sometimes to look back, it actually hurts sometimes to feel that. I really try to focus on what I want more of, and then I'll use the classes and the methods that were given to kind of work that. So I think it's roughly the same method. Yeah.
And so how would you then be able to recognize your own transformation? How do you know that or do you think that the form of the soul is permanent and that there is no transformation, and it's just water in, water out, flowing in, flowing through? How do you see that?
I think what Anthony said, you encounter a situation and you realize that you would have handled that quite differently before. You know, my father died 3 years ago, and it was really, it was lovely. It was really a lovely time. It was lovely to be with him. I knew what to do. I knew what was happening. My brothers were quite worked up, and I realized that what I had gained allowed me to move through it and be comforting, and to him, to them. So I think it's you get on the other side of that and you look back, like Anthony said, and you say, well, you know, that was helpful. That went well. You know, that clearly I'm in a different place than I was before. Yeah.
One of the things that Manda was mentioning is the acquired self. And I think one of our deepest sanskars is not just to acquire, but it's to create different selves and then latch on and use those creations to lose ourselves in, if you know what I mean. And so if we keep doing that, if we keep losing ourselves in our creations, then is there a self behind the creations which never changes? Manda. I mean, in other words, has Manda gone yet? Is Manda still there?
Manda is very much still there.
Is Manda real?
Manda is not real.
Okay, go on.
Definitely, in the sense that the soul and the way that in which Baba describes it is very beautiful. The soul and its original qualities, I think we never lose them. We simply forget them.
Right.
And because we forget them, we find ways to identify ourselves with something. And that becomes an extension of, you know, sometimes I practice in yoga actually, that I'm sitting in yoga, but this face doesn't have these features. This face doesn't wear this mask that I identify with, whether it's Manda, 50 years old, nearly 30 years in Gyan, all of those things, and my personalities, my likes and my dislikes, my opinions. It's like when this mask isn't there, none of those are there. And what's left behind that mask is just the experience of absolute and complete energy of love and beauty and peace. And you know, I'm using these words, but I'm very aware that all of us have such connotations behind these words. We were talking about this yesterday, and that how all of these words, all of this language must be redefined for ourselves so that we can take ourselves into the experiences of these words rather than just think of them as ideas and concepts or things that we've been told about. And this for me is very, very valuable, and to be able to go into the experiences of all of these rather than just use them as ideas. And so yes, in yoga, for me, it's going into that experience which I am. It's not I'm taking from somewhere. And for me, even God becomes a means by which I see myself.
Hmm.
An experience of God, a relationship with God, a connection with God becomes a means with which I see actually a reflection of myself in that being. So then I take ownership of my experiences and who I am, rather than just identifying with all of these things are constantly changing and moving.
So you're saying you do see yourself. Can you see yourself? Can you see yourself?
I see, in a sense, not see with these eyes,
No.
but see through my experience.
So then you are experience.
I am experience.
That's what you are.
I am that.
It's not another acquisition.
No. I am
Okay.
what I experience. I am what I'm able to be, what I am.
Okay. Oh, we'll just have a pause on that one. This moment of silence. Ant, is Ant still there? And why is he still there?
Well, I don't know. You know, one of the things I think that's very dangerous about being a BK or being a Raj Yogi is this exactly what you're saying. You know, we construct, and so we've been given a fantastic Meccano set to construct something else, and we're in the habit of constructing in order to survive and prosper. That's why we've constructed all the bits and pieces, and that's why sanskars are actually very sensible and very useful until they aren't anymore. And this is the time when they aren't. And God's introduced us to all these ideas, and He's given us a club and a dress code. And it's really easy to take the old sanskar of construction and transfer it, and that's why so many people fall off the log. And that's why it takes huge courage.
Just translate for
fall off the log.
Fall off the log, yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, it's like in a sense, fail. I don't want to say fail, but they drop away because it's not real.
Yeah.
And the soul now, for them now, and because actually it isn't real. A constructed BK, which by the way looks exactly the same as a real one. I mean, you know, that's the problem. It's incredibly subtle stuff.
Yeah.
And in a sense, we've been working in the world of materiality and thought, and we're now trying to work in the world of spirituality. And in a sense, the membrane between the spiritual and the physical is thought. And that's very tricky stuff. And it's through thought that we create all the wrong paths and all the right paths. And God can only work with flawed material. I mean, he told us this morning in the Murli, he takes an old harmonium, or yesterday in the Murli, he took an old harmonium. So he works with flawed material to create perfection. It's all very deep and interesting. Am I making any sense now? Or am I rambling?
This takes us into the territory, and Judy, I'd be interested in your take on this, because you've interviewed what you've talked about as a lot of great people, and in a spiritual context. And one of the issues that Ant's bringing up here is the tension between thought and spirit. Thought is temporary and spirit is permanent. And the idea that we get lost in the temporary, which is the construction, which is what Ant and Manda is talking about. We create it and we get lost in it. And so if the soul is permanent, then aren't you always permanently you?
So I'm going to answer a different question than you asked.
That's fine.
So, but I'm going to go back to the interviews. So Gayatri and I decided in honor of Dadi's 90th birthday to write a book. Well, actually, we asked her if we could write a book in her honor, and she said, no thanks, I don't want a book. And we said, okay, how about a book about people who have served the world, people who give of themselves? And she said, okay. So the people we were interviewing, we were looking for people who were altruistic, not great political leaders or that kind of person, but people who had done heroic things, people who had done good things. They weren't necessarily religious people. One of them jumped on a subway track and saved someone's life. Some others pulled people out of the water after an airplane crash. Another one was an educator in Scotland, Bart McGettrick. So they were They were people who had done generous things, and sometimes they had done them in a moment, and it was the only moment that they could remember doing that, and other times they had a whole life like that, like the Jesuit priest. He had a whole life like that. And when we said to them, what happened? What was going on for you in that moment when you did that, when you jumped on the tracks, when you reached out to that teenage girl? And they all said the same thing. They all said in that moment, they looked at the other one. They saw them with a lot of compassion. They didn't all use the same word. We used the word love to describe what they saw. And out of that feeling of love, they just moved from their heart. They didn't think.
They didn't think.
They didn't think at all. In fact, one of them said, I dove in an icy river with 5 pounds of keys in my pocket. If I had been thinking, I wouldn't have done that. If Wesley Autry had been thinking, he wouldn't have leapt in front of an oncoming train. No one does that because he had his children on the platform. So they all, each one of them said, really, it wasn't at all about thinking. It was really about being in that pure vision of love and moving from that place.
So then what's the role of thought then? Is thought just a distraction?
I'm most interested in Daddy last year and earlier this year has been talking all about not thinking, and
Not
she quite
thinking,
often
yeah.
says, don't bother thinking, Anthony.
Yeah.
And I'm
But you're still thinking,
I'm
aren't you?
pretty sure, no, two things. One, I'm sure thinking is a mistake.
Okay.
And the second is that I actually do not think we think. And the reason why I say that is that presumably in 5 minutes, I'm going to have the same thought as I had 5,000 years ago, right? So in a sense, the soul is moving towards that thought. So what I do now is, it's more like a technique, is I see the soul moving through a thought form, which is there eternally. And I can choose to move through one way, changing my thinking actually isn't changing my thinking, it's changing the direction of the soul towards a form that is divine or a form that is material, or, we can there are lots of highways and byways of the directions we can go. But as long as I see it in that kind of construct, mental construct, it helps me recognize that I am not my thought. I'm just the traveler through matter and thought, otherwise known as the cycle of time and drama.
The temporary.
The temporary, yeah.
The temporal, the temporary.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is not temporary. Everything is fixed and everything is eternal,
Right.
but moment by moment it's temporary. Yeah? I hope I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, but eternity is not a function of time.
No.
No. Okay. Manda?
I just love the idea of making my mind such that thoughts become planted in my mind. This is more comprehensible for me than...
Comprehensible, yeah.
Yeah. In a sense that if my mind becomes a mind that's free from being out there, being distracted or attracted, and it becomes a mind that is very still, then whether you describe it in the way that Anthony is talking about it, I don't know how you would articulate it, but my mind becomes a vessel in which thoughts become planted, and those thoughts become planted according, in a sense, to what is meant to happen in the drama, if you like. And all I am doing is just keeping my mind very clean and free, so that the right thing, I'm in the right place at the right time in the right way. This is something that I'm very attracted by and fascinated by. And whether it's God that plants the thought in my head, or whether it's my love that plants the thought in my head, or whether it's drama that plants a thought in my head, actually, it's irrelevant. What is important is that my mind is appropriate, a place, a vessel in which those thoughts can be received, and therefore then manifested through action and interaction.
So then we're back to sanskars again, because what you're saying, I think, is that instead of letting your sanskars create
Yes.
your thinking.
Yes.
You're allowing yourself
Yes.
to emerge your thoughts.
Yes.
And this is why I think is silence becomes the great
Yes.
currency.
Yes.
And in silence there is no change. In silence there is just stillness,
Yeah.
and everything is permanent. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, we are so used to noise and thinking and acting
Yeah.
and interacting, and this has become our identity.
Right.
Without an identity, even if I might think that I don't have any other identity, but the fact that I want to think and I want to engage and I want
Yeah.
to act in itself is an identity.
Yeah.
And this identity takes me away from my own original identity.
So you're avoiding yourself.
Absolutely, you're avoiding what you truly are. The Borg message that we had in Pandabhavan today, very simple. Baba said, not too many details, not too much, just Shiv Baba, silence, and subtle regions.
Yeah.
These three things. And if nothing else, I can just continue to cultivate this experience of being absolutely silent and still. That would be the greatest practice that I could give myself.
Judy, you did a little bit of a research project at one stage into silence. Wasn't that your territory for a while? Weren't you and a few others digging into what it is and
You're
how it works?
talking about the experiments in silence?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the way Manda's characterized it is very nice. And the Bog message here this morning, Sister Mohini said that when we're in that silence, we get Baba's drishti, we get Baba's sakash, and we get signals. So it's the same idea that it's really about making ourselves available so that in the moment we are able to know what we need to do and move there. And not get so distracted that we talk ourselves into things that we then have to disentangle ourselves from later.
You mean like service projects?
Yeah.
Well, that was what
Yes.
the three things that we mustn't have, according to the Borg message in Pandabhavan, is we mustn't be involved in, well, not involved in, but we mustn't get tangled up in science, problems, which begins in S in Hindi, and service.
Okay.
So
that's it. Permission to do no more service.
To do nothing
I
very
was going to
slowly.
just come to that actually. But this is, call it a challenge, but challenge that's a beautiful challenge, that we have to be able to do everything that needs to be done at the confluence age that Baba wants us to do, that our calling is for, and yet still be silent inside. This, when we crack this one, that's it. Everything will just happen. Pew.
Just do that bit again.
You get everything done without doing anything.
really.
That's true power, to get everything done without doing anything. And that brings me to a question, Mike. And that is, what does God do? Does God do anything?
Don't get us going with that one, Anthony.
So there it is. What does God do?
What does God do?
Judy, what does God do for you?
I like this idea that came up this week about my companion. You know, I really spend a lot of time alone by choice, and I think I require that so that I can cultivate that feeling of companionship. It's very tangible for me. You know, it's really. God's presence is very real. I write to him every night, and I sign it, love your child. Really, to disentangle from any temporary identity, etc. So I think in that companionship, in that closeness, it's very sweet. I feel his love and his benevolence, his goodwill for me. And that if I can just stay in that place, then whatever I need to do gets done. The service really doesn't feel like heavy lifting when I'm in that place.
So the idea that a very powerful soul, or a pure soul, a perfect soul, the perfect being, doesn't actually do anything. It's just presence. As if you're in the presence of that being, then it lifts your ability to resonate at that level into that Is that idea?
Right.
That the idea? Disentangled is a nice word.
Well, in fact, Sudesh Didi she read the Murli one day this week, and I don't know if it was in the Murli or if she commented on it, because I didn't go back and look. But it was a Murli about drama and Baba, so it was a few days ago. And the point that she made was, so who's greater, drama or God? And ultimately, the answer to this question was, well, God is greater because God's the one that tells you about this drama that we can't do anything about. And so God telling us, this is what's about to happen, this is what's unfolding. Your job is to make yourself pure so you can align with that for the benefit of the world. So to me, that's what God does.
Not just align with it, but be it in a sense.
Be it, transform yourself so that you can kind of work with that, be with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Presence of God, Manda?
My life, in contrast to what Judy's life is all about, my life is constantly with people. And the only time I have quiet by myself is when I'm in my room to go to sleep. But for me, the experience and the feeling of God, I don't think, actually to be straight about it, I don't think God does anything. God just is. And when I come into the company as being described, or in the presence of that energy, I enable things to happen. Or together we enable things to happen. And for me, what gives me power and strength and the incentive and inspiration to keep going is always at the back of my mind, the feeling of my eternal relationship and I hesitate to use the word relationship because there are so many connotations that people have of that, but at the back of my mind, this feeling, this sense is that God is always present. And because God is always present, that I have this eternal bond with that one, and this bond, the moment I become aware of it, I enable that energy to become present around me, by me, with me, for me, and therefore then for everybody else. And in the presence of that energy, everything just happens. And I think of when God becomes present, it's like synchronicity happens. And my experience this time in Madhuban has been that, and I was telling Wadi this, and we didn't explore too much, but it's just been a thought that maybe I should do this, or maybe I can do that, and then it happens, as if it presents itself in front of me. And I think that this is what God's energy does. It creates such synchronicity and alignment with yourself, with drama, with everybody else, that there is an incredible harmony and beauty and truth that occurs for you. And so the sense then is that God's done it. But it's not that he's sitting there thinking, right now, what am I going to do for Manda? She wants to do this. Why don't I go out and do this for her? It's not quite like that. But our language is like that. And that's why I think language, we have to be careful about the language, and we don't get caught up in this language that we've created. That God does, and I sit back. And then when people, when Daddy or whoever says, don't sit back, we get totally confused. Then we hear things like, what's my responsibility? I hand it over to God. And what God's responsibility, I take over. When we get caught up in this language of what it means when we say God does, God just is. I don't think it
So if God
does.
just is and you just are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And language.
And the two of us have to come together in that way. He just is and I just am.
So if the two have to come together, and we're into language here, you're coming from where and God's coming from where? And where are you and where is he and where do you come together? So we've got three. We've got him there, you here, and together there.
We're in here.
So God's in there.
God's in there.
Oh, really?
Oh, careful with that one.
But this is language, isn't it?
This is language. This is language.
Yeah. So where is God, Ant?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. My understanding of Paramdam,
Okay.
which is the official residence address, because it's just a word, really. I feel that Paramdam is a place, a location. Words problem. Place implies physicality.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously non-physical, where there is no space and no time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And in order for there to be no space and no time, there must be dead stillness.
No language,
Otherwise
so you can't
known
talk
as
about it.
Stillality. Yeah.
Stillality is a new word. Stillality.
Yeah. And when I'm doing my work here in the drama, in a sense, I have to harmonize with the place Paramdam and the prime resident. It's like the language of God is silence, but it's not silence like "shut up, Anthony." It's silence, dead still, stillality, and when you're dead still, you're in the seed stage. There is no time. In a sense, there is no existence, in that there is no materiality. And then you're with God. You are like God. You're everything you need to be. You're karmatit. And to me, the process, my work, other than sitting under the tap, that's one metaphor. But to me, it's about staring at God. If I stare at God, if I stare at anybody...
Not a picture of God.
Yeah, no, not a picture of God. That's subtle, right? You use a picture to help, But if you stare at anyone, you become like them. It's like that's how education works. You just have to be with someone long enough and you get to be one of them, like a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So in this case, it's having the qualities of God. So I stare at God long enough and I become like God. And the effort, obviously, is to keep facing Him, keep my eyes open, all in metaphors here. So to face and to keep my eyes open is to become still, to be aware. Because God only really says three things. He says, you're a soul, I'm God, and this is the drama. He doesn't say anything else. And I have to work with that.
It seems to me what you're describing, and I don't know if this works for you, is that what we're saying is that drama is the result of the illusion of the separation from God.
That's a bit Zen. It's a bit Zen for me.
Drama is the result.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm English, I get that. Yeah,
no, but I'm just of the illusion. Of the illusion, because ultimately is that not what we're doing, is collapsing the illusion of separation.
Well,
God's eternal, the soul's eternal, and therefore eternally together.
Illusion, you know what? Illusion is an illusory word here. Illusion, in some of the lexicon, means isn't really there, but to my mind, illusion means I don't get the joke.
Yeah. So,
okay, but that's a very big difference. It means that it's still there, but I just don't get how it works.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about not understanding how it works, yes. If you're talking about not really there, then I don't agree. I think the drama really is. I really am on stage.
No, the drama is there. The drama is created because of that separation.
Misunderstanding, maybe. Yeah.
That sense of separation, and that's why. Is that why you feel the call to go into silence, to go back to the stillness, to go back to the state of consciousness where you can be aware of the oneness that you have with that being. That's what you're describing.
Sorry, what's the connection between the illusion of the drama that you're talking about within that?
No, the reality
Yes.
is you and God, one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? That's what you're restoring. Is that not what you're restoring when you're untangling the reality of your oneness with Baba?
Well, this is late in the day to open up a big conversation like this, but I don't see it the way you described it.
Okay.
To me, drama is the repeated unfolding of nature, to be as simple as I can be. And the ever complexifying, expanding phenomenon that happens. At this moment, the invitation to us is to return to this permanent, beautiful stillness. But I wouldn't say that drama is artificial or not real or illusory.
No, I didn't say the drama is an illusion. It's your separation from God that is an illusion.
It creates our ability not to get the joke. I
Yeah.
think that's, to me, a better way of saying it. I mean, to me, the greatest illusion is that the drama moves. I've become convinced that the drama is dead still, and it's the souls that move. And this is true soul consciousness.
I think it's really
Put that
late.
in your pipe and
I think
smoke
we
it.
should meditate at this point.
Wait,
Yeah.
no, this is getting
It's
interesting
Judy,
now.
you didn't finish. You didn't finish. Go.
Well, I think if I understand where you're driving, Mike, it's at this point we are under the illusion of our separation. And when you ask the question, where is God? My experience is that when we remember, when light remembers light,
yes.
it pulls
Yes.
light to it.
Yes.
And we have, in that moment, where doesn't really matter, right? Light is drawing light.
Yes.
And so in that moment, all the things that we need to understand, we know them in that moment.
Yes.
And we can move them in that moment. Whether those, all of the rest of it almost doesn't seem to matter, honestly.
In that moment, but as soon as you lose that connection light to light, things then do matter.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's why we have to stay in constant remembrance.
Yes.
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
get that, Manda? You see? Yeah.
I'm trying to just process this idea of illusion, of separation between soul and the Supreme Soul.
Right.
I'm not sure if I would use the word illusion about this separation. I would say that I forgot, and I became distracted about, or I forgot my eternal connection or my eternal bond with God. And so I got caught up in other things. And when I got caught up, then I actually didn't experience myself, or I forgot myself and I forgot God. And so I'm not sure if that forgetting is an illusion, but I do need to, the moment I'm reminded, I remember.
Yes.
But I really did forget, and that's why I got caught up in such a mess.
But when you say remember, you don't mean a memory, do you?
Yes, I do mean a memory.
But then,
I remember,
so your relationship with God is a memory. It's not a reality.
No, it's a reality, but the fact that I remember that reality.
Okay.
I remember that I do have that bond. I remember that God was part of my life, and I remember that I am in His perfect image. And that now, the more I see Him in front of me, then I also return to my image of myself that is like His.
Okay, that's good. No, it's fantastic. I just wonder, having listened to this conversation so far, whether any of you have any burning questions of any of our eminent sharers. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Yeah, meditation is coming. We thought we'd go through to about 7:15, and then we'll have meditation through till dinner. But just wanted to give you the opportunity, if anyone out there had a question? Yeah.
I have a question for Manda. At some point, Manda, as I understood it, you said, Manda isn't real. And then, I am what I experienced. So do you extend or multiply your experiences and name this as being you? Is the question clear?
I think when I say I am what I experience, and then I'm not talking about these physical experiences that I'm having, because those are the experiences that form the part of the acquired self. When I'm talking about I am what I experience, I'm talking about the experience of the eternal self. That's who I am. And I am not Manda in a sense, the character and the personality that everybody else identifies as Manda, and I identify as Manda. That's all got to fall away. And I am to return to that experience of myself as a vision that God has given me of myself, of this truth, this love, the beauty and the peace and the purity. That's the experience, that's who I am, is what I mean. I don't know if that's the question.
Not quite, I believe.
Not quite?
Just pick up the microphone.
Yeah, ask another way if you wish.
Well, when I look at my own experiences of my idea of what is truly is me, then I think, oh, whoa, what a surprise. This is really, it feels like me, my true self. And, well, I'd like to extend that feeling and to multiply these experiences. But that is kind of what I heard you saying, and I was wondering, is that really what you were saying? So then
Yeah,
I have some kind of mirror.
I think so. I think that we're saying the same.
Mm-hmm.
That experience, and I allowed that to expand and grow, yes. Lovely.
Anyone else? Yeah. So just as that question's come up, I'm going to ask the final question to our three speakers is, what do you now feel is the difference between change and transformation in the context of your journey?
Okay, I like very much what you said about what does God do? Well, He is. But then, why, or could you explain His title of being Almighty Authority? If He doesn't do anything, actually, why is He Almighty?
Definitely. That's easy. Yeah. It's a new definition of power. So if you're powerful, it means without too much effort, you can get something done. If you're more powerful, with even less effort, you can get more done. You see where I'm going here? So if you're all powerful, doing nothing, everything happens.
But isn't this is what we hear Daddy talk about and Baba talk about, why is there so much focus on the stage and less on doing? Because the more we start to be, the more things start to happen. And that is power, and that's the redefining power.
And the greatest example of true power on earth in the human form is the newborn baby. And actually in the mythology of Hinduism, there's a fantastic story about kittens that survive in the fire that talks about this. Because actually a newborn baby is the ultimately powerful entity on earth, because the earth spins around it without even realizing it, just on the basis of its complete purity and newness and all their innocence, etc., all those things. And you can do the test actually, and the test is that as you're going back to eat tonight, if you're walking down, just imagine me sitting in the middle of the courtyard there, sort of sitting there on the floor. What would you do? And I'm pretty sure you'd go, whoa, and you'd make a big U-turn around, so he's kind of weird, man. But if it was a newborn baby, what would you do? Straight for it. So who's more powerful? You know. Yeah. I mean, it's these kind of metaphors that help us understand the nature of power. Because it's not about force.
And that power attracts everything to itself. And that's why we say God doesn't do anything, but he does everything. He enables everything.
To get done.
Yeah.
So that means when you sit in front of the television, the power of attraction is... Let's not go there. Okay, I'm just going to ask our speakers just one final question. What for you then is the difference between change and transformation in the context of your journey, if there is a difference? Or is it just semantics? Is it just a word or words? Is there a process of change? Does anything really change? Is something transformed? If so, what is that thing that changes its form irreversibly? Who would like to start?
I'll start by simply saying that I just feel it's a return journey. I don't know about change, transformation. They're all means, if you like, a method to get back to where we once were.
Okay, it's
That's
a return
it.
journey.
Return journey.
Back to where you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to me, to sort of, obviously, completely agree, but to me, the whole thing is about awareness.
Okay.
And when I'm aware, that's different from when I'm not aware. So if I'm aware, there is no sorrow, there is no fear, all the job is done, if you get it. That's when you were talking about illusion, right? If you get it, makes sense, obviously you're not going to behave all those other ways. And so the change is taken place, but the real transformation is from ignorance to knowledge.
Awareness.
Awareness.
Thank you. Judy?
Yeah, I would say it's the same for me, only I would probably characterize it in terms of the awareness of a certain experience. So if I really am continuously aware of the experience of my being light and my being connected to this supreme light, this supreme intelligence, this my eternal Father, and if that experience is the persistent experience, then that, I guess I would characterize that as changing my form,
Changing form.
Yeah.
Transform.
Transform.
Yeah, that's good. Fantastic. Wonderful. I would just like to say thank you very much to all our speakers for sharing, for exploring the meaning of some of these ideas. And of course, it's not that anyone's right or anyone's wrong, but the challenge, of course, is to wrestle and play and explore these ideas in our own consciousness for ourselves. Otherwise, I guess we wouldn't be a spiritual university. And so now at 7:15, we thought what might be quite nice is to head into the territory of silence, have some time in meditation before dinner, and then just see what comes up for you within your consciousness around this particular subject. And I think that's the word we use for that is realization. Seeing for ourselves with the real eye, our inner eye. And that's beyond the limitations of words. So let's have meditation now. I'm going to ask our three speakers to stay on the stage and share drishti. And we'll have meditation through till 7:30 for 15 minutes, and then wander quietly down for dinner. Little round of applause. Sound of one hand clapping. Sound of one hand clapping. That's great. Just gratitude for our contributors. Thank you for coming. Thanks for playing.